Fear stops us from achieving our true greatness. Are you a professional woman who is feeling stuck, unmotivated, or burned out? Are you worried about your wellness? Are you letting fear stop you from crushing your goals? If you answered yes to any or all of these, then this is the podcast for you. Dr. Charmaine Gregory, night shift emergency physician, burnout thriver, and wellness champion, along with everyday heroes just like you, will explore how to face fear in our lives and emerge victoriously.
Fearless Freedom family, I am so excited to be able to chat with you guys again this week. It is something that I definitely look forward to. And have I told you that I really appreciate you? I just want to let you know that. I really appreciate you taking time out of your busy day to listen to the show. I greatly appreciate it. Thank you for all of the positive comments that you have left about the show. Thank you for subscribing. Thank you for sharing. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I can't say that enough because I truly, truly, truly mean it. And every time I look and I see that we have more and more people listening, it just really warms my heart because it just means that more people are joining the tribe and more are learning what it takes, how, maybe just starting on a journey of facing their fear. And it is absolutely fabulous. And so that means a lot to me. So I just want to say that. The next thing is, I've been kind of keeping you guys up to date on what's been going on with the various projects that I have decided that I was going to do this year. So facing my fear of starting a course and doing that. And let me tell you, the course is phenomenal. These ladies are getting ready to launch their shows very, very soon. So definitely look out for that because that's coming and the shows are going to be amazing. I'm super excited about that. And, just watching everything unfold, just seeing the different shows and how they're going to be formatted is just very encouraging and absolutely priceless. And so that was one. And then the other thing that I told you all about was that I did a series of webinars on podcasting about a week ago. And on those, at the very end, I talked about the new service that Fearless Freedom with Dr. G is offering, which is essentially podcasting done for you service. And this is going to take the shape of either a podcast in a box, right? So literally you have a concept for a show. You're kind of on a fair fence. You're not sure which way to go. You're not sure what you need to do exactly. You've kind of read a little bit, but you realize that there's quite a bit involved in doing it. And you just want to create. You just want to make the audio. And you want someone else to do the heavy lifting for you to get it all set up and make it look pretty and get your show up and running. Okay, then that is what the podcast in a box does. It does this, and all you have to do for that particular program is provide the 5 episodes worth of audio. That's it. We do everything else. We do the show art. We do the logo. We do the copy, the show note copy. We'll do setting you up on all the platforms. We'll do all of that stuff. All the heavy lifting will be done for you. All you have to do is concentrate on the content, which is the audio for those 5 episodes. The other part that we're offering is essentially a monthly subscription. So this is where you already have a show in place and you are looking for someone to take over the work piece of things. So you'd like to have the show edited, you'd like to have the show produced, you'd like to have graphics created for the episode, you'd like to have some copy done for the show notes. Maybe you might want to have some social media assistance with posts to help promote the show, etc., etc. This is what we offer. We offer this on a monthly subscription basis. And you can do all kinds of really cool add-ons that will allow for you to modify how you go about your subscription. But the bottom line is, again, all you have to do is provide the audio and the creative side, and we will do all the rest. So amazing. I still can't believe I'm part of it. I have to pinch myself. I'm pinching myself, you guys. I have to pinch myself every single time I think about this because the fear that went into this, like the second guessing, the oh my goodness, what am I doing? I'm a doctor. I am not a techie person at all. I'm really not tech savvy at all. But I know that this is a need. This is something that you all have been asking for. And so I said, you know what? The tribe is asking for it. I have to make it happen. And so got a team together and we're making it happen. So definitely go and check out the webinar on the podcastinabox.com, and that will talk about basically some basic things about podcasting, but also at the very end we'll talk about the details of the program, the launch program. So that's what I have for you all. I am super excited about all these things. Again, continuing to face my fear in many different ways, and of late have been getting on some podcasts. I'm excited about that because I had not done that in a while. So it was kind of cool being the person being interviewed versus having to do the mental logistics associated with interviewing others. So that was nice. And yeah, and in today's episode, we have Dr. Tom Davis, and he's a very unique individual because he's had a varied experience. He was in the thick of things of medicine, and then got to be on the executive side, the leadership side at the boardroom tables, etc. And then now he is doing a lot of consulting for docs to help them maximize their practices, switch over to cash pay type practices, telemedicine, etc., etc. Really interesting guy. So I know you're going to love the episode. So check it out. Hello, Fearless Freedom family. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. Today we have in the studio, well, really not the studio because we're not in a studio, but today we have Dr. Tom Davis. Tom, would you like to tell the Fearless Freedom Tribe all about yourself and who you are?
Well, sure, Charmaine. First of all, thank you for letting me on your podcast. It's a privilege to talk with you and your listeners. I'm a family man. I'm also a board certified family doctor, and I finished my residency way back in 1994. And I was fortunate enough to join a very small 3-person single specialty group in rural Missouri at about the same time that they started working what was the very first total risk Medicare Advantage contract offered to anyone in the country.
Wow.
And again, yeah, this was back in 94. Nobody knew what to make of it. That's why the little small practice got a shot at it, because all the big people were offered it and they had no idea what to make of it. So we sat down with some colleagues, ripped it apart, and learned how it worked. And 18 years later, we sold the health system that we created through that contract and those like it to a regional competitor for $132 million.
Awesome.
Yeah,
that's great.
The number's nice. It doesn't really mean as much as you think.
Okay, fair enough.
What I take great pride is the fact, one, is somebody felt the need to spend that much money to buy our efforts, and two, we must have been generating a lot of value for our patients in order for it to be worth that much. So that was what was really gratifying. So after that, part of that buyout was a personal service agreement where I worked as an employed physician, and it took me a very short period of time to realize that I was not really a very good fit for corporate medicine.
Wow.
So I took my show on the road, and while I was finishing out that engagement, I started doing business consulting with different health systems and other organizations across the country to help them replicate our Medicare Advantage success. And Charmaine, that gave me an opportunity to be behind the closed doors at boardrooms across many different organizations who are governed by many different structures. And I came away foolishly, extremely disillusioned. Let's say I carried a certain set of ideas in with me and was totally disillusioned by them, by watching how the senior leadership of the health systems in this country ruthlessly exploit the clinicians that work for them. And that kind of makes me sound like a Marxist, Charmaine, but I'm really not. But if you sat in these rooms and experienced the unfiltered sociopathy of the people leading and owning the health systems and the insurance organizations in this country, you would become physically ill. I
Oh my
know.
gosh.
Yeah. So I did that for 5 years, and I was very successful at it. I found two things. One, the people who are making money from the delivery of healthcare have completely captured the whole system. So business consulting is not as important in healthcare, and is becoming decreasingly so, because it's the relationship, it's the back scratching, it's the off the books payments, all that kind of stuff. That stuff is what generates quote unquote value in healthcare today. It's really not making the trains run on time or making the trains better. Where they get their money from is making sure that everybody relationships are solid, usually through quid pro quos. And so, business consulting is really kind of dull.
Oh
Uh,
boy.
yeah, so that's the first lesson I learned. In medicine, in a captured industry, business consulting is just not all that, is not as lucrative as it might be, and I saw that over time. But I did recover my passion for helping clinicians who are working in their current roles, and not realizing how they're seen by the people who employ them, and the tactics that are used against them in order to keep them on the treadmill until finally they burn out and they're useless to them. So,
Wow.
what I do is use that experience, Charmaine, to help clinicians, no matter what stage of their journey that they're in, help them do as well as they can so that they can do as well as they can for their patients.
That's awesome. Yeah, it's just interesting that you say these things, like, the disillusionment that you experienced, having gone in with a certain set of ideals to multiple meetings and then coming out realizing, oh my gosh, that is not what's happening. And also the sense, or the setup where the end user, who is the physician, is essentially a cog in the wheel and is disposable. That is really, really sad. And I know that it's really, really true. And, for various reasons, I have, including having gone through burnout and having a desire at one point to walk away from medicine, I have learned in that interim to develop other things outside of medicine in order to create a balance and in order to stimulate passion for medicine. Because, if I were to think about all the things and really how I don't really have the power to fix them, it would really be frustrating, and it would be very, I don't want to say demoralizing, but I would say it's very frustrating and very depressing. And I choose not to be depressed, and I choose joy. And so for me, I go in to my job understanding that I'm a cog in the wheel, but also understanding that I am there to serve my patients and to be the best that I can possibly be for them. And I look at medicine as only a part of my life. It is not what I consider my main passion and main focus. Family is my main focus. Secondarily is medicine. And probably in the same page as that would be entrepreneurial pursuits, things like podcasting and, other businesses that I'm involved in. But I can totally see how, if you're in the boardroom and you're seeing the behind the scenes, how it can be even more in your face what's happening. But I'll tell you that a lot of my colleagues don't see it. They don't understand. I didn't have to go to the boardrooms to get it, but I did have to go into a pit to figure it out. And so, I don't encourage that pathway. I think that the pathway of listening to someone like yourself, speaking about your experiences, is probably a better way to go. And then I also am a person who really doesn't like to present problems without solutions. And so as a consequence, I try not to talk too much about the negative feelings that I have towards the medical field because I love it. I still do. Um, and I love going to work. I mean, it's kind of challenging these days, but I love going to work and I love taking care of patients, especially my elderly patients. I love elderly patients. And, I try my best not to think too much about the infrastructure while I'm there, because I just feel like it saps my positive energy, and I need to have that positive energy to provide excellent care to my patients. So thank you for sharing that. And I wish I had a solution, right? I mean, but everybody's solution is going to be different, right?
Well,
So,
you had a great solution there, Charmaine, which is setting boundaries.
oh
And
yeah,
it is easy to start complaining about what's wrong and not offering solutions. But the all-consuming nature of the healthcare practice is a feature, not a bug, of the folks running things. They want clinicians to work so hard and to be so consumed that they have no energy at all to start thinking about solutions, letting alone applying them. And a big, as the people that I coach in transition, a big strategy to start out with is very simple: is the word no. No, I'm not going to see more patients because that is going to mean that I have to work 60 hours a week instead of 55.
right,
No, I'm not going to do this. So just simply set guidelines. And the pushback that some of my clients have reported has been literally ferocious.
oh yeah, it can be
And
bad.
it is bad, and that's a direct response of the worldview of the people who are running things, and it's completely alien to most clinicians. So setting boundaries and making sure that you have a life outside of medicine is important. And I'll tell you that most people are in such an advanced stage of burnout that simply recommending and working with them for that particular solution really isn't effective, because they're too far gone, and they really have to go through withdrawal before they can experience the quote unquote drug again safely.
Right, right, right. Wow, yes. That's true. Yeah, thankfully I was not I was pretty deep in the abyss, I have to say. But I wasn't to the very bottom of the pit. I probably was maybe a couple of feet from the bottom. But
Mhm.
I guess I was at that point where I could make a course correction. So thankful
Well,
for that.
and
I'm definitely thankful.
everybody hits the journey at a different stage. The most important thing to realize is the worldview that you bring to your job. And we trained in a hierarchy where, at least in theory, the attending physicians who were teaching us were kind of looking out for our best interest. And the people that employ us now, they try to mimic that structure so that you proceed on that assumption. And I'm here to tell you, Charmaine, that the people running things, and even the medical directors that are part of the system, they are not your friend. They are
Oh,
not there
I
to help you.
I,
They
I
are
know
there
that
to
for sure.
succeed, to push the corporate goals, and you got to get away from that paradigm. They are there to use you. And one of the first things, and this will be useful for your listeners, one of the first things I recommend to people who engage me is that they go online and they rent the movie Gaslight with Ingrid Bergman and Charles
Oh my
Flint,
gosh.
and have a movie night. And
Gaslight.
I've actually had people who couldn't finish it because they became physically ill. They
Oh
had
wow.
PTSD type symptoms,
Yeah, yeah. Oh
because
my gosh.
they recognize. I don't tell them why to watch it. Most of them aren't
Right.
even familiar with the term gaslighting. Um,
Right.
and I had a not small number of people come back to me and said, I had a couple that were actually angry at me, telling me, why didn't you warn me? Because they became physically ill from watching it.
Oh
And that
wow.
seems to be a watershed to change your worldview. That the folks that are in the administration above you, even the physicians, they are not your friends. They are not looking out for you. They are looking out for themselves, and they're looking out for the corporate interests. So once you start seeing that, then the scales really fall from your eyes.
Oh,
And
indeed, indeed.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
Because I mean, and the only reason why I know some of this stuff is because my husband is in business. Like, he's a MBA scientist. Um, and he's warned me, he's told me on many occasions with the things that he's seen or the things that I've reported back. And he's like, oh, you just don't understand that you're not important. Like, there's no obligation to you. Like, you do realize that, I mean, this is very morbid, that if you drop dead today or you have some kind of debilitating incident that prevents you from doing your job, you will be replaced. You are a cog. And I think when he said that, I was like, oh my gosh, you're right. This is not like a situation where, you talk to elders and they'll tell you, oh, I worked for this company for like 45 years. And then when I got done working, the boss, shook my hand on retirement, came out to the house and brought me whatever. And then I got my pension. That's not what it is. There's no relationship. There's no obligation. There's no loyalty. There's nothing.
No,
And
absolutely
so,
zero.
yeah, and it's and you think it'd be different because we're in a service industry, right? But a service industry that services humans and the care thereof humans. And so you think that it's compassion based, it is empathy based. Like, you think that that would be what the governance would also depict, but it doesn't. Why doesn't it do that? Because the folks that are leading, and I know that there are physicians that are in leadership, but the majority of people that are leading have never been at the bedside, have never had to look someone in the eye and tell them that the side pain they were having that they came into the emergency department for is actually because they have a new diagnosis of cancer. They've never had to do that. They've never had to try to figure out a means for someone who needs a particular intervention, who has no insurance, figure a way for them to get that. Like, they've never had to do that. And so it's super easy to look at the numbers. It's so funny because I was talking to some nurses on my team the other day, and we were just talking about, the situation currently where, we have to protect ourselves in order to stay safe. And we also have to be wary of, every patient encounter, because anyone that we encountered, no matter what their complaint, it could potentially be someone who is infected with COVID.
Mm-hmm.
And so when we actually have someone that is confirmed to have COVID or has the pathognomonic findings associated with that, even if not confirmed from the testing, that to go into that room, to do things in that room requires a lot, and it requires a lot of time. So if you're a nurse and you have 5 patients and 3 of them, because what our hospital has done, which is pretty smart, they have basically made teams that are hot teams, hot spots. And so only patients who are, high risk or potentially infected would go to these teams in an attempt to kind of segregate the infected from the non-infected. And so if you're on a hotspot team and you have 5 patients and you have 3 of those patients in isolation, every time you have to gear up to go into that room, you might need something outside the room. You have to find someone to go get it for you. I mean, it is very time consuming. But when you look at the numbers say, oh, we don't need that much manpower.
Yeah.
But in reality, you do.
Reality,
You
you
do need the
do.
manpower.
There's no doubt that healthcare is an emotional product, and currently the delivery of that emotional product is run by individuals who are looking at it as an industrial process and are looking at it from a business point of view. And that dichotomy is really a tremendous source of stress for the clinicians. And I think it's amazing that clinicians have enough spirit of service that they hang in there because they really want to take care of the patients. And that's one of the reasons that physicians get stuck in not considering their situation until they have to resort to whatever it is that they do to raise their dopamine levels until that causes them trouble, whether it's alcohol or sex or pornography or drugs, whatever it is. They start using that to try to give themselves a dopamine hit, because they're just they're just stuck in a bad place that's structural, not of their fault, but that they can't make a change. And so, the busyness that is imposed on clinicians is part of the problem. But part of it, as we talked about before we started, was simply that they're scared of the alternative. That the primitive part of their brain says, "Yeah, we're miserable, but who cares? We're surviving." And that's the whole name of the game, is simply to survive, right? Your hindbrain is stuck in the Stone Age, and it's only concerned about surviving. And so you're surviving, and so you really are meeting the hindbrain's goal. And if your forebrain, which is a much newer evolutionary part of your psyche, if your forebrain starts messing with things and says, "Yeah, we're surviving, we're not happy, I want to be more fulfilled," the hindbrain's going to say, "Well, if you try anything, I'm going to make you scared. I'm going to
Right.
make you stressed. And you don't think that I'm not tremendously powerful enough to sabotage anything that you want to do, forebrain." And so that struggle between the forebrain and the hindbrain is expressed as fear, and that locks folks into place. And it's a tactic and a technique that is explicitly taught in business school, of how to keep your the technical support that's in short supply, how to keep them in place at a reason, and keep your labor costs down. And one of the techniques is to use their fear of change against them. And when you look at the ones, or especially the ones with look at the last degree that they earned. If it's a business degree, that's where their heart is. If it's a physician's, a MD or DO or APN, RN, if that's their last degree, that's where their heart is. And that's why, Charmaine, when you look up and down these personnel lists, you will see tons of people with professional healthcare degrees that subsequently earn an MBA, but you will see very rarely, you will see anybody who has an MBA and then went back to med school. And that's because the people that do it understand that
Right.
that's not where they belong.
Right.
So you have to recognize, one, that the fear of change exists on a very real, physiologic, primitive, evolutionary level. And then the second thing you have to realize is that the people who you're working with are intentionally using that against you to keep you from making a change, so that you will continue to work the widgets. And
Right.
once you identify it, then you can start taking a stand. And as people, again, as I work with them, I like to mix practical tactics with individuals, along with a kind of a deep picture of how change happens, so that the individuals that I work with and the wider world can understand what they're up against. For clinicians like you and me, our training was very much set in stone. We jumped through one hoop after another, right? And
Yes.
we were just basically pulled along. But but when you make a transition like this, there's no roadmap. There's nobody to pull you along, because it's in nobody's interest to do so except yours. So you have to understand what's going on in order to make your forward progress, unless you're a very exceptional person, in which case you don't need anybody's help. So after watching Gaslight, advise my clients, and also I advise people who just ask me on LinkedIn and whatnot, to go read Joseph Conrad's Heart of Darkness,
Mm.
and see where the lesson is there, which is that safety is found, where you most fear to go.
Right.
Okay, and the theme that's repeated in Lord of the Rings, right? Frodo needs to
Oh,
go to the one
yes.
place he doesn't want to go.
That's
I mean,
right.
all great journeys of all those journeys of redemption are all say the same thing, which is you got to go where you're afraid to go, and that's where
Yes.
safety lies, right? So, once you start thinking about in those terms, especially when you start associating yourself with a hero's journey, then that makes it a lot easier, not just to overcome the fears, but to recognize the tactics that are being used against you. They're pounding on you every day at work. keeping you from making that change. And you can start saying, well, I recognize you from the Lord of the Rings, or, I recognize you from Harry Potter. You're one of the Death Eaters. I
Right.
recognize you. Okay, you're nothing to me. You're powerless. But man,
Oh
it
man,
takes
this is
intention.
so funny
And
because it's so
you and I
true.
are fortunate. You and I are fortunate that our peers are such strong individuals that they're able to overcome that. Your job and mine is simply to help them overcome their busyness and recognize it.
Indeed. Yes, absolutely. Yeah, it's just fascinating because and then of course once you recognize it and you decide to do, like you said, you decide to do things differently, people look at you like you're crazy. Like, what is wrong with you?
That plugs into another barrier to change, because you and I are evolved to work in small cooperative groups. Certainly nothing larger than 100, probably about 30. And
Right.
so our social, we unconsciously set that up ourselves in our own lives. And when in that small group in the Stone Age, when we're all doing okay, we're all surviving, if one person says, I want to do something really different, well, that threatens the survival of the entire group. And so, in modern day society, when you as a clinician decide to make a change, your whole support system becomes very threatened on a primitive hindbrain level. And then you're also sticking in their face the fact that, they're a similar other, and you're sticking in their face that maybe their choices aren't the right ones either. Maybe there's a threat they don't recognize. And for whatever reason, they act out as resentment and anger with you. And
Mm-hmm.
you notice that, some subtly, some it's not so subtle, whenever you make a big change. And it is a tremendous barrier. And it's the one thing that pretty much uniformly catches professionals by surprise when they try to make a big transition. When you've given your notice and you got 3 months, you got to work out your contract or whatever, the hostility is there. And you didn't really expect that, because after all, these people are your friends or your colleagues. You thought that they would support you and change, and they don't. And when they don't, it's very, very puzzling. And that's another thing that you have to recognize going forward, is that you have to create for yourself your own tribe, a new tribe, one
Yes.
that's doing similar others, making the change that you are, so that you have people that you can rely on for encouragement and support. And I tell you what, those tribes are out there, and people are searching for that. But in the period of time when you give your notice, or people become aware that you're making a change, it is a very surprising barrier. People really experience it, and forewarned is forearmed. But the
Yes.
tactic there is to find a place where you can find your new tribe, and that way you can succeed.
Oh my goodness. It's so funny that you're saying all these things because this was like, I mean, I haven't walked away from medicine. I didn't, at that time. And I currently am working less hours. Like, I went from full-time to 3/4 time at the beginning of the year, with the plan to transition down to probably half or maybe even a quarter time over the course of this, next couple of years. But, it's funny because, as you describe, having a tribe that is going to essentially help you to level up, right? Is the tribe that's going to be encouraging you to go down that different path, even though it's not the path that's already set out and planned for you. And because the tribe understands that when you take the risk of trying something new and different, it's a high risk, but there's high reward. And what's the worst thing that can happen? Okay, you could fail. But with that, I wouldn't say it's a failure. I would say it probably is more like a lesson, and just a guide or a compass to tell you how to course correct. So if you have people at your side who are literally telling you and pushing you to be better than you were yesterday, to not conform to the status quo and to completely transform yourself, then that's when we're going to be our greatest selves. So if we stay in our box, which is, I call medicine a box, if we stay in our box and we don't ever venture out of that box, we never understand our true potential. And it can be that when you step out the box, you develop better skills that you can apply to medicine. That's possible. You may find that you have a different calling outside of medicine, and you may decide to walk away from medicine and pursue that. Or you may have a combination of the two. But it is when we sit in the box and we just kind of look through the slits in the seams, and we don't think that we can step out of the box and into the rest of the world. And we don't think that we can do anything other than medicine, because that's what we believe, right? We think that, oh, there's no way I could go do something else and make the kind of money that I make in medicine. What? Are you kidding me? There's so many things you could do that you can make way more money than you make in medicine, because
You bet.
you know, I mean, there's so many things. And so that, I think, is the thing that is the huge mental block for a lot of people. Because I know that I have that thought every once in a while. You know, when you're on the entrepreneurial journey, like you get that there's going to be like hills and valleys. You get that. You get that there are going to be multiple trials and multiple errors. You totally get that. But you also have in the back of your mind that uncertainty of where the next dollar is coming from, or where the next client is coming from, or whatever, you know, it is for you. Whereas technically in medicine, and I mean, this is not all the way true, but technically in medicine, you know, you figure if you have a license, you have a skill set, you could pretty much like go anywhere and work, right? I mean, this is what you think. You think it's a sure thing.
Sure. Well, and isn't it interesting now, Charmaine, that that deal is breaking down?
Yes.
So COVID has shook. Is the asteroid that hit the Earth, and the dinosaurs just don't know they're dead yet. So
Right.
the clinicians that are working in positions that, you know, I left, being, you know, an employed family physician, you know, they are finding that the financial misadventures previously experienced by their employers are going to be financed in part at the expense of their compensation. And you know, not just because of the decrease in healthcare demand recently, but because health systems are going to have to completely retool their patient engagement experience. They've sunk a lot of capital in commercial real estate. All that is now worth much less than it was. So the government's going to give these organizations lots of money, but they're also going to use it as a way, as an excuse to damp down compensation.
Oh, yeah.
So they got to be careful about that, because that was the deal. The deal is, you know what? Here's your steady paycheck. Here's your dose of heroin every 2 weeks. Okay. You just be a good boy or girl and just keep walking on the treadmill. And when, you know, you start giving the junkie less heroin, then, you know, the junkie is going to look around and say, maybe this isn't the best thing for me. They're going to start waking up. And it's a very harsh metaphor for my peers who are on the treadmill, comparing them to addicts who are hooked on the biweekly paycheck. That is a harsh metaphor. I understand that, but it's also supremely accurate. And for anybody who listens that takes umbrage at that particular metaphor, I urge you to know that it comes from a place of concern, to try to startle you into thinking about why, you know, someone would make that. And the deal now is breaking down. So I believe that more people, more clinicians are going to be more open to taking that step. And for those that are, I have extremely good news, the best. Okay, because one of the fears is I'll leave medicine and I'll never be able to come back. I can tell you with certainty, Charmaine, if
Yeah.
you try to make a big change and try to get out of medicine, okay, and then you decide you actually fail at it, which means that you stop trying and you go back to being a doctor, you will be welcomed with the open arms, because you will be displayed on an explicit and subtle level as someone who tried to leave and couldn't, and see
Right.
what happens. And so you're going to be an example to those younger clinicians who come up saying, don't try this. He did, and he failed. In fact, we want to give you a grant. We want you to give a grand rounds on how you tried and failed.
Oh, wow.
So, you know, the worst case scenario is that you will be absolutely welcomed back into the fold as an example of someone who tried and failed. So that's the worst case scenario, is going back to where you were. That's always going to be an option for you. Even if you give up your license, you can still get it back, and the organizations will help you do that, because they want you in there as an example of someone who has tried and failed. So, now that you know that's how the plane crashes, that is the worst thing you can do to make a change. If you're not fulfilled, unhappy, and you suspect that the deal is changing and that pray I don't alter it further is coming down the road, which it is, okay, then now is the time to start nurturing that little seed of maybe there's something else I can do. Because I tell you, Charmaine, compared to what the average FP was making at the time when I made my transition, I make way more money than I do now. And it's not because I'm special or uniquely talented or anything like that. It's just because I tried. And anybody who got through medical school, and especially a residency, you're so rare and so unique. You're this 0.0001% of the population. You're so in demand. Once you get out of the tightly regulated system in which you sell your services for people who want to pay you less and less for doing more and more so they can make money. Once you
Oh
get
yeah.
out of that system and start going on your own, you will not only be amazed at the level of revenue that you can generate for yourself, you will be astonished at the quality of life that you can lead.
Oh yeah. No, no. I get it. Totally get that. Yeah, no. It's but you said it though. It is that first taking those first steps of outside of the box that we're in. Taking that first step is where people have the most difficulty. And then also, I think part of the reason why they're afraid to do that is because they don't realize that there are a lot of options. Like when I say there's a plethora of options, there is, literally, there's so many things that you can do with that degree, with this degree, the DO or the MD degree. And it is mind blowing, actually, how many things you can do that have nothing to do with being at a bedside or being in an office. So yeah, no.
Yeah, that's right. So that's why with this whole COVID thing, my partner John Jurek and I were thinking about doing this. Had been planning on doing this for last year or so, but COVID accelerated our plans. We created a subscription forum site. It's called Clinicians Cooperative, where we connect individual clinicians of any type, anybody with a professional license, with professional mentors who cover all of the different aspects of non-traditional or non-clinical career paths that people have. Speaking, leadership, invention, writing, working as insurance adjusters, selling insurance. I mean, there's just a huge spectrum of opportunities where an MD will command enormous compensation for a very different lifestyle. And the reason that we created that, Charmaine, is to decrease the energy of activation to stimulate positive change in people's lives. People are so busy, like we talked about, clinicians are intentionally overworked, so they won't make that change. And there are any number of conventions across the country where people can come and interact in person, but those are $3,000 to $5,000, and especially younger docs are broke
Yeah, they can't
down.
afford that.
It's
Not with
also
the debt burden.
a weekend, right? It's also a weekend. And what really opened my eyes is I served as a faculty on a number of these different ones, is that I'm starting to get medical students who are looking around and say, I'm too deep in debt. I can't stop, but screw this. I do not want to be here. Tell me what else I can do with my degree. And, that's a more horrifying indictment on our healthcare delivery system I cannot imagine. That the seed corn would look around and say, no, thank you.
Right.
You got
Yes.
me. I took the cheese. I'm in the trap now. I'm, 100 grand in debt. I can't back out. There's no way to pay it, no way to discharge it. So I'm going to move forward. I'm smart enough to understand that. But what else is out there? What can I do with an MD? And the answer is a hell of a lot. So John and I created this forum that has a low enough price so everybody can afford it, but high enough that you take it seriously and
Right.
you actually engage. It's the problem with the social media forums, is that they're free, so you become the product and you don't really value the information you get on it. And it's very tightly controlled, and employers pay these social media sites all the time to spy on their clinicians to see what you're looking at. It's a line item in most large and medium organizations' budgets. So this is completely private, and the idea idea there again is to provide a little breeze,
Mm-hmm.
fan the flames,
Yes.
lower the energy of activation, and get you moving forward. It's called clinicianscooperative.com, and I'm not really on here to shill for the site in itself, but I do want to give it as an example of someone who is asking the questions that you just asked, which is, what else is there for me? Well, that's a very low investment, low risk way to engage, and just see what's out there and start the journey. But that doesn't mean you shouldn't watch Gaslight first, because it's a great movie.
Right. Yes, indeed. Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I think that there are people who are looking around. I mean, this, like you said, this was the impetus for introspection. This situation that we're currently in with COVID, it is definitely introspective in its triggers, and it is also highlighting deficiencies in our systems, and it is just all around interesting. That's how I like to describe it. I'm like, wow.
And the best thing for you and me, Charmaine, is that we don't have to have the answers. I mean, I certainly am not smart enough to transform the delivery of healthcare. Okay, I did my little bit. It took a lot out of me, but I am not brilliant on the minds with some of the people that I work with and associate with. But what I can do is take my experience and my good fortune and pay it forward to create an environment so that those who are coming after us have the opportunity to make the changes that need to be made. Because if you and I don't do that, then by the time the people who can, by the time the Steve Jobs and the Louis Pasteurs graduate from medical school and residency, the system is going to be so tight and so screwed down that they will never have the opportunity to make the changes that they could have made. So you and I are fertilizing the soil. Maybe we'll till it a little bit, but then we're going to let these people decide what to plant and how to make it grow. And, as I grow older, I'm going to try to make it my mission to take some satisfaction looking back at these people who are so in the fields and watching what they come up with, because if the system stays open, it's going to be amazing.
Yeah, I definitely agree that to figure a way to do our part and then pass the torch to those that come after us, for sure. I mean, I don't know. I'm older, but I'm not like super old. I'm 45. So I guess I would.
Well, you know what? I've come to the conclusion that people come out of residency, you and I, we're super old.
Okay, so in the super old category, but yes, there's still chance for contribution, and there is tremendous opportunity for contribution from the younger set who are looking at it with fresh eyes, maybe have not yet been tainted by the scratches and the dings that you can sometimes get along the road here. So hopefully
the trick is to get them out of the demolition derby. Never let them enter their car in the demolition derby in the first place, so they don't have to use their energies to overcome the scratches and dings. They can use their energy to build a new racetrack.
Yes, indeed. So John Jerica is your partner
in clinicianscooperative.com. Yes,
that's really cool, because he reached out to me years ago, like when I was in the burnout phase or was just emerging from it. And he invited me to tell my story on his podcast. And that was many years ago. And that was the first podcast that I ever was on. And I remember that. He definitely made an impact.
He has inspired thousands. I'm very privileged that he agreed to partner with me in this endeavor. He is someone who has very foreseeing and has a lot of compassion for clinicians who are in pain.
Indeed, absolutely. He's made a lot of impact on a lot of people, as you mentioned, and I can even think of people within my immediate sphere that he has impacted. So yeah, no, he's a great guy. Awesome. And so do you have, and this will be in the show notes, but just in case someone is listening who does not have immediate access to the show notes, do you mind telling the listeners how they can reach out to you?
So the best way to reach out to me is through clinicianscooperative.com. There is going to be a coupon in the show notes to give you some free time on the site to engage with the content there. You can also email me at Tom Davis Consulting, which is my umbrella organization. I For clinicians who want to transition or get into a non-traditional career, we created the clinicianscooperative.com for them. But for clinicians who are interested in something specific, I mentor folks in telemedicine. I also mentor them in how to create and run their own cash pay micro practice, which can be very lucrative on a net side, not just financially, but also personally. So I represent and work with a startup called Wow Healthcare, which is basically an online marketplace where clinicians can post their own prices and get prepaid for their services in cash. And it's a great tool to help you set up your own cash pay practice. And even if you're going to have the option of what you take in terms of insurance, even just getting 10 or 20% of your revenue on a prepaid cash pay basis can make an enormous difference in the quality of your life. So for those people who are interested in staying in practice but don't want to be on the treadmill anymore, I mentor them in telemedicine, cash pay medical practice. And for those who want to stay in the employment scheme, I mentor clinicians and organizations and how to do better under their Medicare Advantage contracts. And as we talked before, strategic consulting with Medicare Advantage has kind of dried up because it's all about who you know and who you pay off.
Right.
But on a practical operational level, these Medicare Advantage contracts are literally the last way that clinicians, primary care doctors, or specialists can leverage their labor in a value-based manner for above average compensation. It literally is the last place you can go for that. So I help people to do that. So no matter where clinicians are on the spectrum, whether or not they want to stay employed, stay in practice, or don't want to do practice anymore, we have a suite of services available to help them. And I will tell you, Charmaine,
Mm-hmm.
a month into the real heavy duty COVID, when all these clinicians are kind of starting to look around, they're getting up, they're catching their breath. 50% of them were looking at quitting practice within 5 years. Now they're looking up and they're saying, well, forget this. This is not what I signed up for. I don't want to do this anymore. What, obviously the people who run me don't care about me physically. They don't care about my well-being. So what else is out there? And that's why we created this suite of services for folks who are starting to ask that question. And we've talked about some practical steps you can make just for fun, which is, watching Gaslight and
Right.
reading Heart of Darkness, going on clinicianscooperative.com. But the most important thing is, and I know you'll agree with me, is do something to
Yes.
overcome the inertia. You got to have some forward. You got to start moving forward before you develop forward momentum. So do something, do one of those three things or do something else, but do something, because the alternative is to break your health, and even worse, break your spirit.
No, absolutely. You have got to not stand still. You have to move forward. That is so right. Even if it's a baby step, because it's just, like you said, you got to get that momentum started. And the only way to do that is through movement. Wow. Yeah, no, thanks for sharing all that. I feel like that is going to be such an important thing for the audience to hear, because I know that there are people who are listening who are in any of those three positions that you described and looking for a reason or looking for an alternative, looking for a solution. So I definitely appreciate you sharing that. What was I gonna, so this has been such, I'm looking at the time, I'm like, wow, we've literally been talking for over 40 minutes.
It's amazing. It's amazing when passion takes over.
And I would start like going, well, you warned me. You did warn me. So I am forewarned and therefore forearmed, right?
Right.
So we are at that point in the show where we do our tradition, which is the fill in the blanks. So Tom, are you ready to fill in the blanks?
I am. I'm ready for the lightning round.
All right. Awesome. All right. So the first one is, if I am fearless, I will
If I persevere.
persevere. Okay. And then the next one is, to me, fearless freedom means.
Setting my own schedule in service to my mission.
Awesome. Awesome. And then last but not least, my battle cry is
Serve.
serve. Thank you, thank you, thank you so much for coming on and sharing all about your experience.
It's been my privilege. I'm absolutely delighted for their conversation, and I finished a whole cup of coffee without even thinking about it.
Oh, did you?
Well, you said
we were at a coffee shop. That's right. The virtual coffee shop. Absolutely. You are absolutely right. Awesome. Thank you. Thank you.